Hello and welcome back. We are starting the Warhol project today, and in order to start that project, we first have to set up our paper in a grid-like pattern. We are going to be working on 12 by 18 sheet of paper for our project. So even though it's really large and you can't see the full paper on my screen, you can see that it is divided into 3 squares at the top and 3 squares at the bottom. Now these squares are all going to measure 6 inches wide by 6 inches tall. So we're going to have to set up our paper like this first. That way we can get the idea of Warhol's imagery of the screen printing, but on our regular sheet of paper. So keep in mind all of your squares should be, again, the same size, the same shape. Okay, if we're using a regular sheet of paper that doesn't have any lines on it, we're going to be using our ruler, and we're always going to use the inch side. So I'm going to start by setting up my ruler, making sure that my 0-inch mark lines up with the edge of the paper. So keep in mind, the ruler does not start at the very edge of the ruler. It starts where the 0-inch line is. So I'm going to make sure my 0-inch is lined up with the top of the paper. Okay, we said that our squares were going to measure 6 inches wide by 6 inches tall. So every measurement that I'm going to be marking on my paper is going to be at the 6-inch mark. Okay, so from the top of my paper down, I'm going to be marking the 6-inch mark. And normally I would be doing this in pencil, but it's just a lot easier to see it in the marker. Okay, when you are setting up your paper, should always be working in pencil. That way, if you make a mistake, you can erase. Okay, so I have my first mark here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ruler, I'm going to place my ruler horizontally towards the top of the paper, again making sure that my 0-inch mark is at the edge of my paper, and I'm going to mark the 6-inch. And if I keep my ruler in place where it is, not only are we going to have the 6-inch marked, but we're also going to mark the 12. Okay, I'm going to use those 2 marks to help line up my ruler so I can create my vertical lines that are going down on my paper like this. So keep in mind, you want to try to have your ruler as nice and as even as possible with the edge of the paper and with your mark. So that way we get a nice straight line that is not slanted. Okay, once you have your ruler where you'd like it, you're just going to put those lines going down from one edge of the paper to the bottom. And I'm going to do the same thing on my second mark up top. So I'm just repeating that same step. Again, I'm going to put my ruler right towards the top. I'm going to make sure that it is as straight as possible. And then I'm going to put in my line. Okay, so this has now divided my paper into 3 different panels. And now, in order to get the boxes on the top and the bottom, I have to use this mark to create my line cutting across. Now, it's easier for me if I flip my paper this way, whichever way is easiest for you. Again, I'm just going to line my ruler up on the mark that I made because that is my guideline mark. I'm going to set my ruler up as evenly as possible. And then I'm just going to start putting in my lines. Okay, once you're finished putting in those lines, you should see a box at the top, a box at the bottom. In the center, a box at the top, a box at the bottom. And in our last space, a box at the top, a box at the bottom. Okay, they should all look the same because they should all measure the same size and shape. So if one section looks a little bit larger, it's probably because your ruler was a little bit slanted, but that's why we work in pencil. Just go ahead and erase it. Once you've completed this step, then you can start moving on to your drawing.